Hey everyone, we have a very special panel that was recorded at a recent Scalpels and Spreadsheets event in front of a live audience. We were joined by three very incredible venture capitalist panelists. Suman Rao, who is the principal at Lumira Ventures, Timothy Sung, who is the senior analyst at Esplanade Ventures, and Zeeshan Ali, who is the senior investment director at Mars Investments Accelerator Fund. These funds collectively invest in different segments of healthcare, health technology, medtech, and the life sciences from pre-seed all the way to Series A. And the conversations that we had with these panelists was a very frank take on what healthcare entrepreneurs should be looking out for in 2025 when navigating the current environment. I hope you all enjoy this one. So to kick off, I wanted each of you to introduce yourselves and just give a quick background about your work. So we can start with you, Suman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be a panelist. My name is Suman Rao. I'm a principal at Lumira Ventures. We are a North American life sciences venture capital firm headquartered here in Toronto. Majority of our investment team is based in Toronto, but we do have partners that are in Montreal, Vancouver, and Boston. We invest primarily in the life sciences space across both biotech and medtech sectors. We invest both in Canada as well as the US. We're pretty agnostic when it comes to therapeutic area as well as modality. We do primarily Series A and up in terms of our investments. So that would be mid to late preclinical stage companies all the way to clinical and commercial stage opportunities. We're currently and actively raising our fifth fund, and the target size for that fund is about 200 to 250 million US. Alongside that, we're also very excited, and we're raising a sidecar fund. We're partnering with the Terry Fox Foundation. This is going to be a first of its kind, unique collaboration in Canada where a philanthropic organization is coming together with a venture capital firm to put together a bespoke oncology-focused fund. And we have an official launch for that next week. So if you want to learn more, come talk to me about it. And just very quickly about myself, I've been at Lumira for the last 4 years. I focus mostly on the therapeutic side of our business. I will say that I probably split my time across new deals and investments, portfolio companies, as well as more recently fundraising. Prior to joining Lumira, I was at a global management consulting firm in Boston called LEK Consulting. I worked with biotech and pharma clients doing strategy consulting. And prior to that, I was at Harvard at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where I did my postdoctoral fellowship in cancer biology and drug discovery of small molecules. And in terms of my education, I went to McGill. I did my undergrad in biochemistry and my PhD in experimental medicine. Very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Very nice to meet everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it. My name is Zeeshan, lead investor at Mars IEF. We're an early stage venture fund investing in pre-seed and seed. Long history of supporting the Ontario ecosystem. The fund has been around for almost 15 years. Have invested in almost 200 companies, deployed about 100 million in capital, and we're investing pretty actively across 4 sectors: traditional enterprise software, health, climate, and deep tech. So we'll do software deals, we'll do hardware deals as well. IEF is under the Mars umbrella. Mars Discovery District is one of the largest innovation hubs in North America, and actively meeting founders and excited to be here. My background, spent a few years on the Mars side, building up a new practice around helping early stage companies with go-to-market sales and growth. Built a network of about 100 global partners who became active corporate buyers of startup technologies. And then prior to that, spent a number of years in corporate development, M&A, corporate strategy and industry, and then started my career at PwC, one of the big consulting firms. So very excited to be here.
Okay. Hi all, my name is Tim. I'm an investor at Esplanade Ventures. Esplanade is an early stage healthcare VC. We're based here in Toronto with people in Montreal and Vancouver as well. Focus largely on digital health as one of our sectors, but we also do B2B SaaS, tech-enabled services, and devices. Stage-wise, we tend to come in seed through Series B, check sizes of 500K to 2.5 million. Besides that, Esplanade, we have our sister fund called Persistence Capital Partners, and they're Canada's largest healthcare-only private equity platform, focused more on traditional brick-and-mortar healthcare businesses in Canada and the US. Thematically, we've done a lot of work in AI-enabled solutions, women's health, chronic care, chronic condition management. We are disease state agnostic, but we have spent a lot of time in areas like cardiovascular, behavioral health, oncology, and we want to do more in areas such as GI and palliative end of life. In terms of my background, did my undergrad at McGill as well, just in finance, investment management, and started off at one of Canada's pension funds in their direct private equity team, worked across a wide range of sectors, but in terms of healthcare, I had a good amount of exposure to CROs, CDMOs, healthcare supply chain logistics, healthcare IT platforms. During my time there, they also spun up a venture and growth team. When I was working in financial services, we did a lot of deals alongside them. Eventually decided to come back to Toronto and do something a little bit more interesting. So I've been at Esplanade for about a year and a half since.
Amazing. So to just get started, I think a lot of people here have, either considered raising or are in the process of raising right now. We wanted to hear from all three of you, some of your personal metrics for what you look for when you're having that first conversation with the founder. So that would be the initial phone call you have. What are the things that you're looking for when you're deciding whether to pursue conversations with that founder a bit more or, not pursue that opportunity? So we can start with you, Timothy.
Sure. So I think it depends on the context of the first meeting. If it's a cold outbound or you know nothing about the company, the first call is often information gathering. If there is a connection or a warm lead, maybe another investor has passed along to you, then maybe you're looking for an understanding of what that person might have found interesting, this person, in order for them to refer it over to you. Generally, things you're looking for are a lot of traditional buckets, like team. You're looking for strong founder fit, a good reason for them to start this company, and some sort of domain expertise in whatever they're building. Product market fit, you want to understand that the solution works, is viable, depending on the stage of investor. Maybe you want some sort of complexity around the solution. Commercialization, for us, we don't come in pre-revenue, so we do look for some level of commercial traction. For us, that means at least a paid pilot. Someone somewhere is willing to pay you even a nominal amount to try out your solution, to at least validate market interest for it. And then you'll look for other things such as competition. Is it a very competitive space? Are there already well-funded peers that have a significantly better product than you? And then lastly, you're trying to pull out details about the raise to understand if it's a good fit for you, the type of structure they're raising on, existing investors, and things like that. So overall, you're gathering a lot of basic information, which then you'll probably bring to your team and make a go or no-go decision to dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think Timothy said it well. I mean, for us, just to give some data points, we see roughly 1,500 to 1,800 companies. We invest in 8 to 10 every year. So the ratio is very small to investment. What I'm looking for in a first conversation, we do invest at pre-seed and seed. We're typically the first institutional check-in at that pre-seed, but founder investor fit is everything. I want to hear the story. I want to know why the founder is building what they're building. What are they passionate about? Tell me a bit more about the market, the technology, the team itself, the advisory element to the team as well. But I'm trying to piece together a very tight-knit story in a 30-minute call and at times a 15-minute call in that first conversation. And I think what's critical for us is a very smooth storyline to all the things I've mentioned is critical for us. And if it aligns with our general thesis, we're more often than not having a second call to go much deeper. But this is where I think kind of that initial pitch, being it streamlined, to the point, direct, and getting us excited about why you're building what you're building is so fundamental for us as early stage investors.
I think most of the topics, most of the points were covered. The only thing that I will add from Lumira's perspective is, we are a very thematically driven firm when it comes to our investment focus. Some of the broad therapeutic areas that we have invested in and we continue to invest in would be oncology, cardiovascular, neuroscience, I&I, and infectious diseases. And when I say we're thematically driven, what we do at our firm is we proactively do deep dives across various therapeutic areas as well as modalities to understand really what is coming up next within these fields, skate to where the puck is at. I think we do believe in that quite a bit. So when we meet with a company, I think it has to be broadly a fit within one of these themes for us. And we don't look at a company in a singular format. I think we look at it from the perspective of whether or not it broadly fits within our theme, and compared to everything else that we've been looking at, does this stand out? Is this truly differentiated for us to be, spending more time on? So, to give you a little bit, to put it into context, let's say we've done a deep dive in the radiopharm space, which has been super exciting. So we met with so many different radiopharmaceutical companies just to understand, the different isotopes, the different conjugation technologies, the teams, the founders. And then ultimately we decided to go ahead and invest in Alpha 9, which is a company based in Vancouver. It's a Canadian company. They were part of the mega rounds last year. They raised, I think, close to 200 million, and we were one of the investors. And we did that after looking at the entire landscape of radiopharm companies, and we felt comfortable to go into that company and also, support Canadian companies, which is something that is top of mind for us.
That's great. So just diving a bit more into detail about some of the metrics that you're looking for in your deals. So Suman, you mentioned that with your company, you're looking for something that's, quite different from the other companies in your portfolio, but you also mentioned, looking into things like risk in terms of the investments. So what are some of the metrics that founders can look for, when actually approaching Lumira Ventures? And I have the same question for both of you as well.
Yeah, I can start. So I did mention this in my intro. We typically invest in companies that are Series A and up. And by that, I mean companies that have some level of de-risking that has been conducted, even if it's at the preclinical stage. So if you look at our portfolio, roughly, I would say about 20% of our investments go towards early stage companies. So that's preclinical stage companies. About 60% of our investments are in the mid stage. So that would be early clinical to late clinical. And then we have about 20% of our investments that are allocated towards commercial stage opportunities, which mostly is on the medtech side. So when we look at a preclinical stage company, even though it's early on in development, there's a lot of risk associated with it. We like to see some form of de-risking, either in the form of, a lead optimization or having a development candidate, or maybe being 6 to 12 months away from IND enabling studies, which gives us sufficient confidence that, we've seen enough data for us to think and believe that this is going to work down the road. But I think everybody here understands the risk that is associated with biology. There's only so much you can control. So there are companies that don't work out. There are assets that don't work out. But from that perspective, the way to de-risk it would be to think about, who the scientific founder is. Have they been doing this? Who is the management team? Are they able to execute on the milestones that they have set as part of the financing round? How are they going to mitigate these risks? If it's a single asset company, then you really are putting all of your eggs in one basket. So are there other ways for you to be able to, pivot to a different strategy? And if it's, on the financial side, we think about de-risking when we think about deal structuring as well. So the way to do that would be to tranche the deal. And by that, I mean, you put a small percentage of capital to work as part of the financing round and get to a meaningful milestone, at which point you have de-risked the program even more. So there are different ways to do this, and we think about it in different perspectives. And I will say that when we invest in preclinical stage companies, We like to find those in Canada because being a Canadian investor, although we do invest in Canada and the US, we like to allocate our, a big part of our preclinical stage and early stage companies for the Canadian ones that we see.
Yeah, from an IF perspective, I mean, our fund primarily 60 to 70% is in the software space, the remaining 30% hardware. When we think about software these days and the proliferation of artificial intelligence and how easy it is to embed certain tools within products, increasingly we're trying to get our head around is kind of for a true enterprise software SaaS digital health company, is tech really the moat, or does go-to-market penetration really win in certain markets? So we're increasingly trying to better understand how founders are thinking about go-to-market. And that's one of the areas that we look at more often than not. Even at pre-seed these days, we are seeing founders generating revenue and traction. It may not be true SaaS revenue, but just some indication of signal that there is value for the product that they are building. They are getting interest in market. And we're increasingly seeing that at that pre-seed level, given how easy it is to build product in tech. So that's on the software side. On the more hardware deep tech investments that we do, obviously as early stage investors, what we're trying to better understand and de-risk is the long sales cycles, the increased cash burn. So we're always trying to be thoughtful in terms of how do founders think about managing, extending runway, being very thoughtful with non-dilutive funding, not just relying on dilutive funding, being very persistent about their sales and go-to-market strategy. So on the hardware side, we're also relying on, is there an IP moat, a tech moat, and that helps as we think about de-risking. And the last thing I'll mention, from an ecosystem perspective, we're in a unique position to work with a lot of corporates, and as we're diligencing deals, we take a corporate lens to how organizations think about procuring tech from a startup lens. And as we think about de-risking, as we think about sales cycles and need in market, definitely comes up. So the nice to have versus need to have discussion, understanding, to really understand how quickly companies can scale in an 18 to 24-month financing cycle becomes very, very critical for us as we're deploying capital. But as a multi-sector fund, Ontario-focused, we tend to see a lot of different deals in different sectors and start to triage based on that.
In terms of what we look for, maybe starting off with geography, we'll invest in companies. They could be domiciled in Canada, the US, Europe, Israel, but they need to be actively commercializing in North America. Oftentimes, it is more helpful to have a legal entity or Canada in the US just for IP considerations. Stage-wise, mentioned before, seed to Series B, but depending on the specific area of healthcare that you're operating in, whether medtech or software, that can mean very different things in terms of company profile when you're raising. For example, medtech, you can go up to Series A, Series B, and they might not even have any commercialization yet. They might have just gone through FDA at that point, and they might be raising significantly larger amounts of money and call it a Series A. Whereas maybe on the tech services software side, you might be looking for different things. We don't have a threshold for commercialization, but what I've seen in the market so far for companies who have been able to successfully raise rounds at the seed, I've seen anywhere between 500K to $1 million, Canadian or US. Series A, 2 to 5 seems more reasonable. Obviously, there are outliers depending on the type of tech you're building, but right now we're seeing companies take longer to go to market. They'll be incubated building more before they decide to raise any external capital. Besides that, we don't have any particular focus areas. As I mentioned, disease states, we won't do anything invasive, so we'll only do up to class 2. On the device side, we won't come in pre-FDA or pre-pivotal. Pre-pivotal is, post-pivotal is the earliest we'll come because we want to see outcomes data for whatever you're proving out. And then there are specific areas that do interest us more. We like tech-enabled services. For example, collaborative care model in the US is a model that we support and have backed. We've made a couple bets here, one in a company called Override for chronic pain, and more recently in a company called Cerulacare, which is enabling that for oncology patients. We are also led by founders and operators. So our founder's name is Dr. Sheldon Ellman. Started what was North America's largest executive healthcare business called Medisys, grew that to 600 plus docs, tens of clinics here all across Canada before selling to a strategic several years ago. And so he's also operated many other healthcare businesses, and there are areas that he really enjoys working on. We also have operators who come from like McKesson Global Management, and so pharma, clinical trial, life science tooling, those are things that we'll also look at quite deeply as well.
Just for all the founders in the room, I guess, one other thing that we think about is de-risking from having access to capital perspective. So we want to come into a company that is supported by a good set of investors that are deep pocketed. I think, it is such an important point because I think if you've paid any attention to the venture ecosystem over the last few years, you'll see the ups and downs. But it is very important to have an existing set of investors who can continue to take the company forward in case of not being able to raise an externally financed round. And I think that is one of the biggest ways to de-risk an investment. So when I think of an early stage company that comes to Lumira and that needs to get funded, I think one of the key things to think about is don't just raise 2 million or 5 million or 3.2 million, because I've seen those come to us. Ask for more money, raise more money, because prepare for a rainy day. And by rainy day, I mean rainy days, multiple days. So I think having that extended cash runway, which is coming through insider-led rounds, is going to be very, very critical to take the company forward. So I think that is a big de-risking factor to keep in mind.
Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, we want to understand a bit more about storytelling and what's the best way to actually approach venture capitalists, but also to close that round. So starting with you, Zeeshan, would you have any feedback on, what kind of structure founders can have when it comes to storytelling, and what's the best way to actually structure those conversations?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for us, again, given the stage that we're investing in, which is really early, the way we analyze and look at deals, for us, it's founder first. So really understanding the background of the founder, why are they building, what's the story behind the problem that they're trying to solve, who's the team around them, what's their expertise, what's the advisory team. I think first and foremost, that's who we're betting on at this stage. And as we think about it as early stage investors, we're in board meetings. We're actively talking to our portfolio founders to help them scale at this really early stage. From there, we love to see the link between founder to market, right? So really understanding the problem. Why does the problem exist? How are the founders tackling this problem? Educate us on what does the market landscape look like? What does the competitive landscape look like? As multi-sector investors, we are not experts in everything. So more often than not, we're learning from the founders in this early conversation. So that's fundamental and critical. And then lastly, again, at the stage we're investing in, the product is not finalized. It's being built as we're investing. But I think what's really important is help us understand what is the roadmap? How do you scale this product? How do you differentiate yourself in markets that are becoming more and more saturated with technology that is moving so fast? And to put this together in a very clear, concise manner that gets us excited about what you're building is so fundamental for us as early stage investors. And more often than not, founders can be very technical. But I think the biggest gap that I see at this early stage is encouraging founders to really sell themselves. I think Canadian founders don't put themselves out enough about being very passionate, and I think that passion goes a long way in early stage conversations because at the early stage we know there's going to be ups and downs. We've seen this from our portfolio companies, but people who are driven by what they're building and have kind of a unique link to why they're building what they're building tends to really show as times get tough generally at this early stage. But yeah, having a very concise narrative is so fundamental as the first few conversations with investors.
Suman, would you have anything to add for that regarding the story that you hear in terms of the team that's actually approaching your company?
Yeah, I think we have a track record of investing in passionate, mission-driven entrepreneurs who are tenacious. I think patient impact for us is top of mind, obviously, in addition to being able to generate returns for our LPs. But if you come into our office, you will see tons of posters that we're exceptionally proud of. These are product approvals from our portfolio companies. We've had over 40 different FDA product approvals. Just in the last 6 quarters, we've had 5 different FDA product approvals, 3 of them in oncology. So patient impact for us is meaningful. I think when we see that in founders, when we see that in management teams, being able to take a company from really being early stage to being able to get to a meaningful exit, either through an M&A or an IPO, to ultimately deliver products to patients, I think is what we look for. We're not kidding ourselves here. I think it's not easy to run a company. It's not easy to take a drug from start to finish. There are more failures and more setbacks than one would want. But I think being able to overcome that, surrounding yourself with the right team, surrounding yourself with the right board, the right set of investors, and being able to problem solve, I think that's what we look for. Obviously, we don't work with founders that are running the company, because we come in at a later stage when VCs that are in the mix have brought on a more seasoned management team. So we're looking for all of these different characteristics in a CEO, CSO, CMO, like the C-suite team, ultimately being able to bring products to patients and drive the company towards meaningful success.
Final question for Timothy. Do you have anything that you're looking forward to in 2025 when it comes to new ventures at the seed stage?
So there are definitely lots of things I'm looking forward to this year, but I think the biggest piece will be looking for companies who are able to kind of capitalize on a lot of the chaos and uncertainty that's going on politically, that's leading down to some areas in healthcare. We do focus a lot on the US healthcare space, and so there are a lot of things going on that investors are talking to each other about. Certainty around Medicare, Medicaid, the VA, how certain regulatory changes are going to impact how departments are actually able to both approve solutions and fund certain programs. But there's still a lot of opportunity there. And so if a company can find a way to really capitalize on change and kind of de-risk it for an investor, whether one scenario happens or another, I think those will be really interesting deals.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today for just having this conversation with different founders. So that brings us to the end of our panel. Could we give our panelists a big round of applause? Thank you so much. Okay. Thanks for tuning into the Scalpels and Spreadsheets podcast, where we spotlight people transforming healthcare from the inside out. If you want to stay in loop on upcoming events, new podcast drops, or connect with people in our growing healthcare innovators community, head over to our website, scalpelsandspreadsheets.com, or follow us on LinkedIn.